G'day City Skylines fans, and we're back this week with another Dev Diary number 3 on the list, which is public and cargo transportation. I'm excited to get stuck in. Looks like there's a few new features that we don't have in the current game, so let's take a look. So I've watched the video and I'll put a link to that in the description below, and now I'm diving into the Dev Diary on the website, which has far more details. So let's go through that. I think the key thing from the video and also the blog post is that a lot of the transport types that we have in the game currently are there in the new game from release, which is really exciting. I think the only exception that I saw was trolley buses and ferries. I haven't seen any mention of those, so possibly the game will go live without them. When we start the game, it describes to us that we unlock buses and taxis from the very beginning, and then we have to achieve milestones to unlock different types of transport as our city grows. One thing I did notice as I'm reading through this blog post though is with the different types of transport, they talk about, obviously you need to put down the building, whether that's a depot or something like that, but they talk about this constant maintenance. So the depot just doesn't spawn the vehicles, it maintains them as well. So it'll be interesting to see whether buses or trains or trams or whatever kind of transport we use, whether those vehicles then need to return to base to get topped up on maintenance or get fixed and then go back out into the city. It'll be interesting to see. Then, like the current game, buses and taxis are obviously restricted by traffic conditions. So we know now that traffic is going to be a big thing, traffic jams, accidents, as the city grows. It's harder for these vehicles to get around. So obviously when the city gets bigger and congestion becomes a thing, then we start to look at other forms of transport. Then the other thing I spotted with taxis is, at first, before you upgrade the taxi depot, the taxis are dispatched to passengers from a taxi stand, but when we get the dispatch center upgrade, there are no limits for picking up fares across the city. So that's something different we haven't seen, and it'll be interesting to see how that works. But I just love this, again, like the previous Dev Diaries and the different functionality we're seeing, there's just such a more detailed management kind of role that we need to play, which I think is really exciting. It really fundamentally changes the game in a good way for me anyway. I don't know what you think. Then in a similar way with trains, again they make a point of first building a rail yard which sends out and maintains your trains and connect it to the tracks, whether they're pre-existing tracks on the map already or whether we have to lay those as ourselves. I think the key thing is that maintenance. That's really different to what we're used to now. So again, whether the trains have to go back to base and get maintained, or whether there's a little vehicle that goes out on the track somehow and does that, that would be really interesting. It's a different dynamic. But one thing I think that takes trains to the next level in this game as you read through the Dev Diary is that we can create two-way and double tracks as well as one-way tracks, elevated tracks, bridges, tunnels, and cut and fill tracks running lower than the ground level. And in addition to that, trains can go backwards and forwards and thus utilize track switches created by combining two-way and double train tracks. Now that's different to what we're used to now. We can obviously do one-way tracks, that's fine, but not with switches and things like that's an added level of complexity, which I quite like. It'll be really interesting to see what that's like when we actually play the game. Will it cause us headaches, or will it be just a fun way to manage our trains? But I think one other key thing I took from watching the video and the pictures we see, the train tracks look so smooth, they look so nice. Again, taking cues from the stuff that we've seen with roads, just beautiful sweeping curves, and I'm really excited for that. It's going to look so good. Then they come on to trams being that flexible light rail option as the city expands. And again, similar to what we're used to now in the current game, we have the option to put those tram lines in as part of the road. So using that new replace tool that we've seen to upgrade the road to include tram tracks, or running tram only tracks separate to the road to keep the trams away from congestion. One thing they do mention though, which I think is quite interesting, is they talk about trams being obviously more expensive than a bus network, but at the same time they're more quiet and do not pollute the air. Now that's something we've seen way back in the original videos, and they've spoken about air pollution and the fact that industry not only pollutes the ground, it pollutes the air as well. So maybe that starts to become a key consideration for us as our cities grow to try and avoid that air pollution. Then the subway is next, so the metro, again one of my favourite transport options, and similar to what we see now, again we can run them under the ground like a subway, a traditional subway, we can run them over the ground, and we can run them on elevated tracks as well, which is really good, just giving us those options, which is really nice. And again they make mention of the fact that we can have double subway tracks, one-way tracks, and then bridges and tunnels, which is really neat. So nothing really left field with that, but that's okay with me. I think there's nothing wrong with the way they work now. So I guess in the game they'll be probably more fine-tuned, and the fact that we can now alter the price of these and kind of manage them. And also when we look at the video with the UI, now we can change the number of vehicles on a line. So again, not having to use mods to do that from day one, which is so nice. Then we come on to water transportation, but I think we'll cover this in more detail a little bit further on when we get to cargo types, because they dive into that a little bit more deeply at that point. But it's nice to see, you know, when you watch the video, the visuals of those cargo ships and those passenger liners, those cruise ships, just look beautiful. They look so nice. As long as we don't get the current problem where we get 40,000 spawning at once, that'd be nice. Then air transportation, and didn't these visuals look wonderful? I really like how they look. The airport shot just looks, oh, I love it. I can't wait to get stuck in. So they talk about airports requiring a huge amount of money. It's a very expensive thing, and also a larger amount of room, so they make mention that it could be the size of a small town. So probably not too dissimilar to what we have now. I know when I use the airport DLC, I can get definitely carried away and end up building some massive thing. So it'll be interesting to see whether we have flexible airport buildings that we can kind of upgrade, like we've seen with other upgradable buildings like power and universities. It'll be interesting to see if airports behave the same way, or is it like the airports DLC where we literally place each individual part and have full control over that customization. What's also nice to see in terms of the UI is we can really see that takeoff and landing path now as well, which is a nice touch. Then we come on to cargo types, and this is where things change. So we know that we have delivery trucks and vans moving around the city before we put any other form of cargo moving transport. But then with the addition of cargo trains, they talk about that once that terminal's built, companies can use it as a storage point for incoming and outgoing cargo even before there's any cargo lines. So once that's kind of put down and connected, I guess, there's a storage option there, which I think is quite cool. I mean, that's behaving a lot like real life. You know, I imagine in real life, these big cargo train terminals have huge areas of storage while they're loading and unloading trains. So it's really nice to see. Then they talk about once that's connected up, they behave similar to a passenger train. And when we watch the video, there's two tabs now, a passenger tab and a cargo tab. So it looks to me like now we have that extra layer of control over what we're doing with cargo. And the fact that they're commenting that we can import and export goods to outside connections, both via rail and ship, to me it makes it look like now there's that added layer of complexity in terms of balancing the books. If we have an overabundance of one resource or goods, then we try and export those for a profit, similar to what we do with industries just now. As we move our way up the levels with an industry, we can export more expensive goods and make more money. Something similar we're seeing here without the mention of an industry at all. That's just how it works, which is really cool. And then they make mention that obviously the priority for the distribution and shipment of goods would be road initially, but then when we put down those alternatives for transportation like train, ship and air, then those companies will use those forms of transport, whether they're cheaper or faster, as we lay those down. Again, they talk about the large amount of traffic that can be generated, something we see right now when we put down cargo terminals. So again, just building on that and putting the onus back on us as mayors to do something about that. then cargo ships, and firstly, how good do they look, by the way? I just honestly blown away. They look so realistic. But they talk about the fact that cargo ships are much slower than trains, but they can carry much bigger amounts of cargo than trains can, and they make mention of 1,000 tons. So that's great to see that we have that option. Didn't really see a lot about shipping lanes or anything like that. I'm not too sure if we have that level of control over it, or like we currently have, they're pre-made on the map and we just plug into those. So that will be interesting to see as well. And then air cargo transport. So this is separate obviously to passenger transportation at an airport, and the fact that compared to cargo trains and ships, cargo planes are relatively low capacity, but they are much faster. So we're seeing trade-offs there in terms of the capacities and the speed of those transportation options, and possibly the cost as well, obviously. And then we turn our attention to the new gameplay with transportation lines. So unlike what happens in the current game with buses, taxis and trams, they all had depots, and trains and metros spawned directly from the station once a line was created. This time around in the new game, each land-based public transportation type has a depot or yard where the vehicles are not only spawned, but where their maintenance takes place as well. So they're constantly mentioning that maintenance element, again similar to roads, how it can cause accidents if we don't maintain them properly. I'm not sure whether the same would happen with these transportation vehicles, but some way maintenance plays a role here. They also mentioned that each of those depots can only support a predetermined number of vehicles, but that can be extended through these building upgrades, which is really cool. You know, at the moment when I'm building sort of taxi depots, if that's something you're putting in your city, you know, by the time you get to the limit of 25, it'd be really nice if you could upgrade that. But instead we have to put multiple buildings down. That's obviously not the same in the new game, which is quite neat. Then the blog talks a little bit about transportation lines and how for land-based vehicles we go about putting down a depot, we build stations, we lay tracks, and then they talk about buses first, and traditionally they use pre-existing road networks where stops are placed, very similar to what we have now. And then also they make mention the fact we can have bus-only roads and things like that, which is excellent to see. But then they come on to this part which has got me really excited, and they talk about the line tool and the fact that it's more flexible when creating lines for road-based vehicles. They've got a screenshot here. We can see the road network and the transportation line view that we're seeing, and unlike what we have now with bus lines where you have to kind of play a little bit of jiggery-pokery sometimes to get the bus going around the roads where you want them to, this time around we're setting waypoints that can control the route taken by the bus from stop to stop. So we can turn off waypoints and direct the buses away from busy roads or intersections to quieter stretches of roads, and that's just a brand new level of control, and I'm really excited for that, because I don't know about you, but sometimes at the moment with the game, when I'm trying to get a bus route to go along a particular road, you have to maybe put in a couple more to force it to go around a certain way. So the fact now we can just set these waypoints or place these waypoints, I'm really excited to see that in action. And it looks like I spoke too soon earlier, because then further down here as we read this part, they talk about harbours needing to be connected to seaways with the seaway tool. So we haven't seen this one yet, this is quite new, and after this you can create ship lanes travelling between the city and outside connections, or between harbours, which I just think is awesome. And again, doing the same with airports, being able to directly connect those to outside connections with the airport line tool. This is just brilliant, just total control in game, and I love that, because again at the moment in the game I use a mod to maybe delete where the shipping lanes or the air routes are and kind of move them around to suit where I want to put my airport. So this is great, just having that level of control. I love it, I love it. And breathe. And then the last point they make is, with the exception of buses and taxis which unlock with milestone progression, I was actually wrong before. Each transportation type is unlocked using development points in the development tree for transportation. So it looks like we're going to need to wait until a development diary that specifically talks about these development points to understand what the value is and how we do that. And then lucky last is the transportation overview. So again, showing you screenshots of the UI and the transportation info view. And I don't know about you, but what I love about these dev diaries and seeing this footage is they've really thought about the user interface. It looks really clean, it looks really sharp, but it gives us so much more information than we're used to in the current game, and allows us to really interrogate at quite a deep level what's going on. So an example to use is we even get to see how much cargo is shipped and what cargo lines are busy, and potentially that's helping us decide, do we need to add a different form of cargo transportation? And the same with public transportation as well. It will work the same way obviously, and that's what we're used to seeing right now. But as I say, just adding this public transport and then cargo tab and splitting the two to help us better manage them. And then we have the transportation overview panel, which as I said has those two tabs to split public transport from cargo. We can see how much of a particular cargo type is being shipped, what that looks like, how many vehicles, and then on the passenger tab, similar to what we see in the current game, having the ability to turn those on and off. So if our city is humongous with lots of transport lines, we can clearly see or hone in on one to make it easier to see, which is really neat. So yeah, just some really nice added features here without going OTT. And then the line panel, so this is a new one and I love it when I watch the videos and I see this. This is so much cleaner, so much nicer than what we have now. And again, having that ability to see the lines, seeing how spread out those stops are in one place, and then changing ticket price, changing the number of vehicles on the line is really, really nice. And then one step further, again, not having to use the mod toggle whiteness anymore. Looking at the picture, we can see the city around the stop, but also see that transport line as well, to really help us put those stops in the best possible position. And then also having that ability to change the transportation lines operating hours, day, night, both day and night. And then for cargo lines, we're able to adjust the number of vehicles as well as the operating hours on those too. So I just love this, you know. And again, the ticket price ties back to the citizens' pathfinding calculations. We heard in the previous dev diary that in terms of pathfinding, citizens have different needs. Some prefer cost, some prefer time, some prefer comfort. And that ties in here in terms of our ticketing prices, and it all links in together, which is just great. And there we have it, public and cargo transportation in a nutshell. What do you think about from what you've seen? Drop in the comments below your thoughts and what you think. For me personally, I like what I see. I love that we just have that extra layer of granularity in terms of the lower level details of what we can set. I know some people probably don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of that, and hopefully there's default options that we can use in terms of pricing and number of vehicles and things like that, but also for people like me to be able to dive deep and really have control over what you're doing there, which is really exciting. I think the other key takeaway for me is to really see what these transportation types look like in terms of these hubs that we can upgrade and that look after maintenance. I really want to see how they work, and I'm just really happy to see that a lot of my favorite transport types are included from day one, which is really exciting. I don't know if we'll see maybe ferries introduced further down the line, maybe even trolley buses, who knows, we'll have to wait and see. But for today, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I don't know if you're as excited as I am, but I can't wait for the next dev diary where we keep finding out more and more exciting stuff as we approach the game's launch. So thanks again for watching today and have a great day. I'll see you next time.